I've recently bought myself a new cordless tool, which is this cheap and cheerful Parkside Cordless Reciprocating. Previously I've been using this corded Reciprocating, and I think this was only about 20 quid off Amazon, and it's lasted really well, to be fair. But I'm using it more and more in situations where I can really do with it being cordless. So I decided, when this came up in Lidl for I think £25, I thought it's worth getting it. The other reason that I bought this is because I had a circular saw that I broke, which uses the same battery system. So I had a spare battery, which means I've got one 2 amp hour battery, and then I also bought a bigger 4 amp hour battery. What I use these a lot for is like cutting up firewood and pallets and just generally cutting up rough stuff, so it should be up to the task. The motor and stuff sounds pretty good on it. I'll compare it to this corded version. So you can hear that's a lot louder. Compared to this. And the motor instantly stops on this one rather than slowing down like that one. It's pretty much like most Reciprocating. It's got the foot that is adjustable. Not that I ever really adjust that. With this one it's just set and left, and that doesn't even want to adjust, to be honest, so that's just getting left. It doesn't come with much, it's just a bare unit, battery separate and one blade, but I've got blades and stuff for it anyway. Comes with your standard plastic case, but it's quite nice because this case will fit the large battery on the unit, and then it's got space for the second battery to sit, so I can keep everything in there along with a load of blades, and then everything's just in one container. This didn't even come with a box or anything, so this has just been hanging on the shed wall, and as you can probably see from the state of it, it's had a bit of a battering. One thing the Lidl doesn't have the option of is turning sideways, but to be honest, I never really use that feature. I just cut sideways. One thing I will have to get used to is you have to press across this thumb piece in order to pull the trigger. So you have to push this button one way or the other, or the trigger is locked, which I guess will be fine, but muscle memory, you just go for the trigger without pressing that. Once you've pressed it and pulled the trigger, you can take your thumb off of it. So it shouldn't be too big of a deal, and I guess it stops it accidentally being triggered. It actually feels pretty well built for a cheap tool. I'm a big fan of the Aldi and Lidl tools. They've always seemed to last me pretty well, other than the circular saw, but I did put that through a lot of abuse, just chopping pallets, and they were nipping the motor, and yeah, I just killed it. But I think I would have killed any cordless circular saw doing what I was doing with it. So like I say, most of this is just rough cutting, so to test it, I'm just going to cut up a few pallets and just see how it copes compared with the corded version. I'll do a little comparison. I'll do a few cuts with this and a few cuts with this using the same blade, and I'll see if there's much difference between the two. Now I've given it a bit of a decent test, I can now give you a few of my thoughts on the saw. First I'm going to go through some of the drawbacks. There's not many, and there's a lot more benefits, so I'll go through the drawbacks first and then I'll go on to the benefits. The first thing is, it's definitely not quite as powerful as this corded one. It's exactly what I expected. Cordless tools, unless they're very expensive ones with really good batteries, aren't ever going to be quite as powerful as a corded version. Now I wouldn't say that this lacks power. It did everything that I wanted it to. It was more the fact that I'm just so used to that saw that it was a step down in power. But if you're getting it as your first recip saw, you're not going to notice that it's under power. You can hear it's got a good strong motor, but it's just a slight downside for me that it's not quite as powerful as this one. It's also got no speed control. Now this one sort of has speed control. It's got the adjustable dial on the trigger, which stops the trigger going in as far. So it's not an adjustable motor, but this one has no adjustability. And if you want to cut slower, you'll have to literally move your finger. Not a big deal for me, because when I'm cutting stuff, it's all or nothing. You're just chopping through something rough. But just for this as a bit of a review, if that's something that you need, adjustable speed on the motor, this obviously doesn't have it. Now the biggest downside, not only to this tool but all of the Lidl Parkside tools, is just the availability. They obviously come on the sort of special offers down the middle aisle, but that means you have to wait to get them. So if you're watching this whilst they're not on offer in Lidl, it means you probably can't get one. It's a bit frustrating that they don't just have a website that you can just buy all the tools from. There is a Parkside website, so I'm not sure if they're maybe looking to develop that into somewhere where you can actually just go and buy the tools. But for me, that is the biggest frustration. Like I mentioned, I had this battery, but I'd been waiting for something to come along that I could buy to use with that battery. But I had to wait quite a few months for that, because like I say, you have to wait until they're available in the shop. So that is the biggest downside, not only for this but for everything. And I think it's the same with the batteries. So if a battery dies, you have to wait maybe a month or two until the Parkside stuff comes back in, so that you can then buy a battery. So that is the biggest downside to stuff like this. So the biggest benefits for me are, number one, the price. At £25, you literally cannot go wrong with this. With the battery, I think it was 45. So yeah, you're not getting a better cordless recip saw for that sort of price. So yeah, that is the biggest benefit. It's really well made. It's nice and solid. It feels much less sort of cheap and plasticky than this one. Now it is plastic construction, but just the overall quality, and it's got like a rubber grip, it just feels a lot better made than this one. But at the same time, it's also quite light. So if you were to work with the two of these, this one is a lot heavier, even though it doesn't feel as well made. So this one you can see is a bit more compact, but it's better made, it's more solid, but it's also a bit lighter. So that's a massive upside for it. I think one of the first things that I noticed when I first used this was just how much quieter than this one it is. It might sound quite loud on video, but this is so much quieter than that one. I don't know the decibels or anything between the two, but yeah, it's significantly quieter than this one. So that's a massive upside, especially if you're chopping for quite a while. With this one, you really need ear defenders on. With this one, for a few quick cuts, you don't even notice it, to be honest. It's also got the adjustable foot, which, to be honest, I never use, but it's got a good level of adjustability. So if that's something that's a plus for you, it's something that some of the cheaper saws don't obviously come with. And also some of the cheaper ones, the adjustability can be a lot smaller. So for a cheap saw, this comes with really good amount of adjustability. Like most saws, it comes with the quick release system, which, to be honest, I didn't even realise you could still get Recip saws that didn't have this quick release. This one also has it. This one's a little bit stiffer and older, but it still has the quick release. But if you're looking at a really cheap, maybe unbranded one, it's something to consider. If it hasn't got a quick release, it can be a bit of a pain to change blades if you need to get tools out and stuff. One other thing that is massively noticeable with this one over this one, it has an electric brake. So as soon as you release the trigger, the motor cuts out, whereas that one keeps going for about, it's a good 10 seconds with that one, and stops instantly. So that's a massive benefit, because yeah, it's just a pain waiting for a motor to run down. And then finally, I just want to touch on the battery. So I think that it's a positive. I don't really have enough experience of cordless Recip saws to know whether the battery was really good or the battery was poor, but as you saw from the amount of cuts I did quite a lot of cutting, and realistically this is the sort of tool that you normally only do a couple of cuts with. It's not something that you're going to be using for an hour. So I probably used this for a good 20 minutes maybe solidly, just cutting, and it did everything that it needed to. And it also still has a little bit, I've charged it since, but, and it also had a little bit of battery left. I didn't necessarily test it with this battery, but it should last half the amount of time, so it should still give you a good amount of cutting. Whereas this one lasted, I would say, a pretty decent time, but like I say, I'm not savvy enough with cordless Recip saws to know whether the battery performance was better or worse than should be expected, but I think that it'll do everything that I'll ever need it to, and with a spare battery I don't think I'll go wrong, to be honest. So overall, this is a really good tool for the price, and considering the benefits and the drawbacks, I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're looking at getting either a first Recip saw. I do think the fact that you can use this without plugging in is a massive benefit. Or if you're like me and you've got a corded one but you're finding yourself needing a cordless one more and more, I'd say this is a really good option to upgrade to. I'm going to probably still use both, but to have this and not have to worry about plugging that in, if I'm going to maybe be doing cutting up a load of wood or something and it's in the workshop, I'll just plug that one in and use it. If I need to go somewhere, or you're out on a job somewhere and you want to cut something cordlessly, it just makes so much more sense to use this one. Most of the drawbacks with this, to be honest, aren't really massively applicable to me. The reason I use a Recip saw is just to rough cut stuff. It's never sort of precision stuff, so stuff like an adjustable speed, it just doesn't matter to me. I just fire through it. So the drawbacks to me aren't a big thing, but maybe to you they'd be a bigger thing. But like I say, the benefits much outweigh the drawbacks in this for me. So I would definitely recommend this. I'd highly recommend it, to be honest. One thing I will do is, if there is any changes, I'm going to add it as a pinned comment, because I've only used this a few times. The next time I use it, it might break, and obviously it makes this review a bit null and void. So what I'll do is I'll keep using it, and if I've got any update, I will just put it in a pinned comment, and if it breaks, or if I have any issues, or if I find any other comments to put, I'll put it in a pinned comment. So check out the comments just to make sure nothing's changed. But yeah, overall, definitely a good tool. If you've enjoyed the video or if it's helped you out, please do give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.